Recently, a student in the online Sravasti Abbey Friends Education Program asked a question, and it really sparked my thought. And I thought, well, this would be a good chance for me to review some topics early on in the Lam Rim, and also to think about how well I'm putting them into practice. So she asked, what does it mean to be receptive to the Buddha's teachings? And how does one be receptive? So I was thinking that this is addressed in the beginning of the Lam Rim, in the section about listening to and explaining the teachings. And so first, Lama Tsongkhapa really gives us the factors that increase our receptivity to the teachings. So he begins by talking about the benefits of listening to the teachings, and then goes into a section about how to generate respect, both for the teachings and for the teacher. And then he gives two analogies about how to be a receptive student of the Dharma. So we probably all can recite this, but it's the three faulty pots, and to not be those. And so that is in this analogy that there's a pot, right? So the first one is it's upside down, so nothing can get in. The next one is it's right side up, but there's holes in the bottom, so everything leaks out. And the third one is it's right side up, but it's dirty, right? So whatever very pure liquid is put inside of it, it becomes contaminated. So in the same way, listening to the Dharma, we are receptive when we are open, when our minds are paying attention, when we're listening well to the teachings. And we're also a good student when everything is not leaking out after listening to a teaching. And also that we have a good positive motivation for listening. And then there's also the analogy of being a patient, recognizing that we have this disease of dukkha, of the afflictions and karma, basically of samsara, and that we look to the Buddha as the doctor, the Dharma as the medicine, and as our earnest, sincere practice as the cure, as the actual way to take the medicine. I think the way he describes it is the cure as being earnest practice, but the nurses are the Sangha, right? In that analogy. And then I also wanted to share what Venerable has said about receptivity about 10 years ago. And I think this really summarizes what Lama Tsongkhapa is saying in this section. And she says, an open state of mind that really marvels at the realizations that the holy beings have, respects them for it, and aspires to develop those realizations ourselves. And by extension, we want to hear the teachings and the instruction and to receive the guidance so that we can develop those. So then I asked myself, well, how receptive am I? And I recognize my receptivity is quite biased. And it's biased because generally I'm receptive to teachings that I've tried at least to put into practice. I'm receptive to antidotes to various afflictions that I've seen in my own experience work for my mind. And especially with teachings or texts that I review again and again, then I'm very receptive to reading those more, to studying them more. But I found that there's a few areas where I am not so receptive, and this becomes quite obvious when I look at my mind. And so one of those is the teachings on the paths and grounds. So the teachings that explain the various levels that a spiritual practitioner would go through on their way to Buddhahood. And there's this mind that's like, this is so far off. Like, why are we learning about this? Like, I mean, I don't think I'm going to attain anything in this life in terms of realizations. So why would I need to learn, what's like in a few eons? And so the response to that has been, well, this is like a map, right? So we would look at a map, we would look at Google Maps before going somewhere. When I went to India, I was looking at, about Dharamsala and how to get around and where to stay. And so it's helpful that we actually know where we're headed. There's also the point about when someone asks what the path is about or what are the stages of the path, to be able to actually tell them. Because I've also seen that in myself, where there's questions that I don't know the answer to because I haven't been so receptive to those teachings. And so in this regard, I was thinking, well, maybe I need to stretch my mind, like in terms of really recognizing my potential. That imagine, as Venerable has said, like imagine what it would be like to be on these various paths and grounds. Another area that I've seen my lack of receptivity is when I've read Mahayana sutras that give these enormous numbers about, I don't know, like 6 million bodhisattvas surrounding Maitreya or something, or 7 billion or 10 sextillion, these enormous numbers, or kalpas or eons. I found my mind, I was reading it fairly recently, a book with various Mahayana Sutra quotes, and I could just see my mind kind of tuning out, kind of starting to be skeptical. And so I just noticed that in myself, but I wanted to keep reading, so I did. And then reflecting back, I realized, well, interspersed between all of these enormous numbers are so many beautiful, helpful Dharma teachings. And when I go back to this book, I'm like, oh, there's so much here that's so valuable. Why would I shut down just because there's some big numbers? Like, maybe I need to just, again, expand my mind and think, well, maybe there's beings who can send out 7 billion light rays, to bring 7 billion sentient beings out of dukkha to liberation. Like, maybe I need to think about that. Or at least just imagine it. And the other thing I thought, well, maybe I can't see everything. Maybe I could have some humility and think that maybe there are beings out there who can do things that I can't comprehend. And the other thought I had was maybe there's some deeper meaning. Maybe it means something that there's this many, or maybe it simply means a lot, and I just need to move on. So in any way, maybe I just need to widen my view. And the other obstacle I've seen to my receptivity is kind of on the other side of this. The first two being kind of skepticism regarding the teachings. The other mind state that I've seen is this mind that says, oh, that sounds good. Yeah, those great qualities, yeah, that sounds good. I don't have any skepticism of that. I'll just believe it. So this idea that blindly believes the teachings, I think is also lacking receptivity, because in the Buddhist tradition, we're really encouraged to investigate. And if we're just like saying, yeah, that sounds good because I read it, that's not being receptive in terms of a Buddhist practitioner, in terms of really being receptive to put in the energy to investigate things. And so I found this sort of vague, passive acceptance of the teachings in my mind. And so I think for this one to really nudge myself and recognize that this blind belief is not going to help me when someone really questions what I'm believing. It's not going to help me at the time of death when I really am seeking a refuge. If I've just blindly believed and not investigated for myself, then is that really going to be a refuge? So then this student asked another question. She says, how is receptivity distinct from having the karma to meet the teachings? And so I was thinking that, well, being receptive is something we do now. It's about our attitude. It's how we approach the teachings. It's what we do with what we learn. And having the karma to meet them is a result of what we've done in the past. So our receptivity in the past and past lives. And also our prayers to meet qualified teachers and to meet the teachings again. So I think, really along with the aspirational prayers that we make, that that will meet the Buddhist teachings in the future, that will meet qualified teachers, is that being receptive now, really practicing what we learn, that creates the causes to encounter the Dharma in the future. And so let's do that. And I'm specifically talking to myself, wanting to overcome my own lack of receptivity.